Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming No One. I'm your host, Big Taj, and today we're going to talk about Stanza 3. So Stanza 3 actually starts the reawakening process in the evolutionary cycle, okay? So this one is a bit longer than the ones that we've discussed before. It's about 12 different subsections. So what we're going to do is break it up into two parts. Today we're only going to talk about the first 6, and then next week we'll finish off the last 6. And it's going to follow the same format that we've been using in the other episodes, which is I'll read you the excerpt and then I'll give you my own interpretation. But again, y'all do your own due diligence, read this yourself, sit with it, meditate, because our guides give us different answers, okay? And give us different clarity points. So definitely sit with this and look at this yourself. But I'm going to hop right in and get us started so that we can get through this. And then next week we'll continue this one section. So stanza 3 part 1 says, the last vibration of the 7th eternity thrills through infinitude. The mother swells, expanding from within without like the bud of a lotus. Part A of the secret doctrine says, the seemingly paradoxical use of the sentence 7th eternity, thus dividing the indivisible, is sanctified in esoteric philosophy. The latter divides boundless duration into unconditionally eternal and universal time and a conditioned one. One is the abstraction or the noumenon of infinite time. The other, its phenomenon appearing periodically as the effect of Mahat. And again, Mahat is just the universal intelligence limited by the manavanteric duration. With some schools, Mahat is the firstborn of Pradhana, which is undifferentiated substance, or the periodical aspect of the Mula Prakriti, the root of nature, which Pradhana is called Maya, the illusion. In this respect, I believe esoteric teachings differ from the Vedantin doctrines of both the Advaita and the Visashidvaita schools. For it says that while Mula Prakriti, the noumenon, is self-existing and without any origin, is in short parentless, Anupadaka, as one with Brahman, and Prakriti, its phenomenon, is periodical and no better than a phantasm of the former. So Mahat, with the occultist, the firstborn of Gnosis or knowledge, wisdom, or the Logos, is the phantasm reflected from the absolute Parabrahman, the one reality, devoid of attributes and qualities, while with some Vedantins, Mahat is a manifestation of Prakriti or matter. So part A just tells us that the 7 eternities are indivisible, but through esoteric philosophy, we are able to divide this balanced duration. And the divide is between unconditionally eternal and universal time and conditioned eternal and universal time. So one is the noumenon or the cause that happens in the spiritual or higher planes, and the other is the phenomenon or the material or lower plane, which is the effect of the Mahat, which is finite or limited universal intelligence. So the Vedantins believe that Mahat is a manifestation of matter, while occultists believe that the Mula Prakriti, the noumenon, is self-existing and doesn't have an origin, while the Prakriti, the phenomenon, is just a ghost or the effect of the Mula Prakriti. So Mahat is the first manifestation from the one reality, which is devoid of attributes and qualities. It's knowledge, wisdom, or the Logos. Part B says, therefore, the last vibration of the 7th eternity was foreordained by no God in particular, but occurred in virtue of the eternal and changeless law, which causes the great periods of activity and rest, called so graphically and at the same time poetically, the days and nights of Brahma. The expansion from within without of the mother, called elsewhere the waters of space or universal matrix, does not allude to an expansion from a small center of focus, but without reference to size or limitation or area. Means the development of limitless subjectivity into limitless objectivity. The ever to us invisible and immaterial substance present in eternity through its periodical shadow from its own plane into the lap of Maya. It implies that this expansion, not being an increase in size, for infinite extension admits of no enlargement, was a change of condition. It expanded like a bud of lotus, for the lotus plant exists not only as a miniature embryo in its seed, a physical characteristic, but its prototype is present in an ideal form in the astral light from dawn to night during the Menoventeric period, like everything else, as a matter of fact in this objective universe. From man down to mite, from giant trees down to the tiniest blades of grass. All this teaches the hidden science is but the temporary reflection, the shadow of the eternal ideal prototype in divine thought. The word eternal notes well again, standing here only in the sense of eon, as lasting throughout the seemingly interminable but still limited cycle of activity called by us Manavantara. For what is the real esoteric meaning of Manavantara, or rather a Manu Antara? It means esoterically between two Manus, of whom there are 14 in every day of Brahma. Such day consists of 1,000 aggregates of 4 ages, or 1,000 great ages, Maya Yugas. Let us now analyze the word or name Manu. Orientalists in their dictionaries tell us that the term Manu is from the root man, to think, hence the thinking man. But esoterically, every Manu, as an anthropomorphized patron of his special cycle or round, is but the personified idea of the thought divine, as the Hermetic Pymander. Each of the Manus, therefore, being the special God, creator, and fashioner of all that appears during his own respective cycle of being, or Manavantara. Fohat runs the Manu, or Dayan Chohan's, errands, and causes the ideal prototypes to expand from within without, to cross gradually on a descending scale all the planes from the noumenon to the lowest phenomenon, to bloom finally on the last into full objectivity, the acme of illusion or the grossest matter. So part B just tells us about the seventh eternity, the last eternity before manifestation was inevitable, because there are cycles of activity and rest, or the days and nights of Brahma. The mother is the water of space, or the universal matrix. The expansion from within without is talking about the great breath. This breath in, then without, is without limitation. So the expansion wasn't an increase in size at all, but a change in condition. When it says expanded like a bud of a lotus, it is referring again to the fact that the lotus seed contains a miniature version of itself before the fertilization process occurs. So everything in this objective universe has its start in the spiritual world before physical manifestation, or before creation. We are all reflections of an ideal prototype in divine thought. We are eternal, but even that is limited by the Menoventeric cycle, because we eventually go back into this all, or this pattern of rest. So Manavantara means between two Manus. There are 14 Manus in every day of Brahma, and the day consists of 1,000 great ages. So occultist considers Manu as a personified idea of thought divine, where Orientalists believe it comes from the root word man. So each Manu is the creator of everything that exists in its respective cycle. And Fohat, which is the electrifying principle bringing every atom to life, runs the Manus and causes the desired prototypes in lowest vibrational matter to form. So stanza 3 part 2 says, the vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wings simultaneously the whole universe and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the darkness that breathes or moves over the slumbering waters of life. Okay. And then the secret doctrine says, the Pythagorean monad is also said to dwell in solitude and darkness like germ. The idea of the breath of darkness moving over the slumbering waters of life, which is the primordial matter with the latent spirit in it, recalls the first chapter of Genesis. Its original is the Brahmanical Narayana, the movers on the water, who is the personification of the eternal breath of the unconscious all, or Parabrahma, of the Eastern occultists. So the waters of life, or chaos, the female principle in symbolism, are the vacuum to our mental sight in which lie the latent spirit and matter. This is what made Democritus assert, after his instructor Leucippus, that the primordial principles of all were atoms in a vacuum, in the sense of space, but not an empty space, as nature abhors a vacuum, according to the Peripatetics and every ancient philosopher. So in all cosmogony, water plays the same important role. It is the base and source of material existence. Scientists, mistaking the word for the thing, understood by water the definite chemical combination of oxygen and hydrogen, thus giving a specific meaning to the term used by occultists in a generic sense, in which is used in cosmogony with a metaphysical and mystic meaning. Ice is not water, neither is steam, although all three have precisely the same chemical composition. So first, what is a Pythagorean monad? This concept actually comes from the Pythagoreans, and Wiki Theosophy says that a monad is said to be the only source and indivisible origin for all diversity in the universe. And Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who wrote a book called Monadology, said that monads are elementary particles, being the ultimate elements of the universe. They are substantial forms of being with blurred perception of each other. The monads are the center of force, of which space, matter, and motion are merely phenomenons. They are eternal, indecomposable, individual, subject to their own laws, uninteracting, and each reflect the entire universe in its pre-established harmony. So the monad is the first thing that came into existence. Numbers came first as abstract entities, and from numbers came points, then lines, two-dimensional entities, three-dimensional entities, bodies, culminating in the four elements, earth, water, fire, and air, from which the rest of our world is built up. So the first part is telling us that the monad, which is the first thing manifested, elemental particles, dwell by itself in darkness like a germ did in stanza 2. In stanza 3, section 2, the idea of the great breath is moving over the primordial matter with spirit in it. This is what they are talking about in Genesis chapter 1, but it actually comes from the Brahmanical Mariana, or movers on water, as the Hindus like to say. And they basically illustrate this as a green man sitting on water or the ocean, who is supposed to represent the eternal breath of the unconscious, all moving over the waters. And the feminine principle is the water of life, or chaos. Now, water represents different things based on who you are talking to. Water can represent emotions or intuition. It can represent primordial matter from which everything proceeds. Water as a cosmic element, and water as a chemical compound, which is how we know it on our planet. So the waters of life represents the waters in space, which are the feminine principle. It's the source of material manifestation, right? So we come by water, and so does the universe. So it goes on to say that the feminine principle is the vacuum or space where spirit and matter lie dormant or inactive. When this was being translated, scientists confused the use of the term water with the chemical compound of water, H2O, or water we see in the physical plane, not understanding the as above, so below correlation. So the waters above are not chemical in nature because chemical bodies are specific to the material plane. This is basically saying that the vibration is being sent out, which I am sure they mean thought vibration, which sweeps across the dormant waters of life where all manifestations come from, causing the monad to separate from the all. Part 3 says, darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the waters, into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal periodical germ, which condenses into the world egg. Now, part A says, the solitary ray dropping into the mother deep may be taken as meaning divine thought of intelligence impregnating chaos. This, however, occurs on the plane of metaphysical abstraction, or rather the plane whereon that which we call a metaphysical abstraction is a reality. The virgin egg being in one sense abstract eggness, or the power of becoming developed through fecundation, is eternal and forever the same, as just as the fecundation of an egg takes place before it is dropped. So the non-eternal periodical germ, which becomes later in symbolism the mundane egg, contains in itself, when it emerges from the said symbol, the promise and potency of all of the universe. Though the idea per se is, of course, an abstraction, a symbolic mode of expression, it is a symbol truly, as it suggests the idea of eternity as an endless circle. It brings before the mind's eye the picture of the cosmos emerging from this boundless space, a universe as shoreless in magnitude, if not as endless in its objective manifestation. The simile of an egg also expresses the fact taught in occultism that the primordial form of everything manifests from atom to globe, from man to angel, is spherical, the sphere having been with all nations, the emblem of eternity and infinity, a serpent swallowing its tail. To realize the meaning, however, the sphere must be thought of as seen from its center. The field of vision or of thought is like a sphere which proceeds from oneself in every direction and extends out into space, opening up boundless vistas all around. It is the symbolic circle of nowhere, a conception which enters into the compound idea of emblem. The mundane egg is perhaps one of the most universally adopted symbols, highly suggestive as it is, equally in spiritual, physiological, and cosmological sense. Therefore, it is found in every world theogony where it is largely associated with the serpent symbol, the latter being everywhere in philosophy, as in religious symbolism, an emblem of eternity, infinitude, regeneration, and rejuvenation, as well as wisdom. The mystery of apparent self-generation and evolution through its own creative power, repeating in miniature the process of cosmic evolution in the egg, both being due to heat and moisture under the efflux of the unseen creative spirit, justified fully the selection of the graphic symbol. The virgin egg is a microcosmic symbol of the macrocosmic prototype, the Virgin Mother, which is chaos or the primeval deep. Now the male creator, under whatever name, springs forth from the virgin female, the immaculate root fructified by the ray, who, if versed in astronomy and natural sciences, can fail to see the suggestiveness. Cosmos, as receptive nature, is an egg fructified yet left immaculate. Once regarded as boundless, it could have no other representation than a sphere. The golden egg was surrounded by 7 natural elements: ether, fire, air, and water. 4 ready, 3 secret. So it may be found stated in Vishnu Purana, where elements are translated, envelopes, and the secret one is added, ahamkara. The original text has no ahamkara. It mentions 7 elements without specifying the last 3. So basically, this is the first place where light is manifested from darkness. And the part where it says light drops one solitary ray into the waters, into the mother deep. This is actually explaining the process where the male or masculine principle directs its wheel, which is a ray or an angle of light or heat, towards the feminine principle, which is called chaos or the waters of life, to start the creation process. So the virgin egg is referring to the spirit matter before impregnation, or the ray of light hits the primordial substance. So this is similar to how our eggs are fertilized with sperm. Impregnation happens before the egg drops into the uterus. Again, this is just reiterating that we are endowed with the promise and potency of all of the universe inside of us before we even get here, and this happens on the spiritual plane. This is before the egg is germinated. All of this, though, is symbolism so that we have a reference point to apply our understanding. There is no actual egg, but this is the idea. It's symbolic of the circle or egg-shaped sphere which has no beginning or end, kind of like the snake eating its tail, which again has no start or no ending. It just kind of goes on for eternity. Now, the mundane egg is the egg after fertilization, and it is a universally accepted symbol. It is usually associated with the serpent symbol. So this is the stage where manifestation actually begins. So the egg represents the differentiated cosmic matter in which the germ receives its first angle of light. So the germ is woke up by this ray of light, which is the second logos manifesting. So this is equivalent to the incubation period after the egg has been fertilized and before it drops into the uterus or the womb of the universe. So this mundane egg is also called the world, and it's representative of the manifested world. This is a symbolism again for eternity, regeneration, rejuvenation, infinitude, and wisdom. And it represents the cycle of the all regenerating itself from itself over and over again to evolve through its own creative efforts and power. And this is due to heat, which is the male principle, and moisture, which is the female principle, collaborating under the direction of the invisible creative spirit or God energy. So the virgin egg is the microscopic symbol or lower vibrational or matter manifestation, and the Virgin Mother is the macrocosmic or higher vibrational spiritual manifestation. The Virgin Mother is the primeval deep or chaos or waters of life. So let's just take a quick second to review. The first part of this stanza is basically just describing that last part of that 7th eternity in the state of non-being before the manifestation process or creation process starts, and this is the stage stage where the great breath happens. Now, the second part of this is describing that great breath or that heat going across the primordial waters that are still laying dormant at that time. Okay. And then the third one is the first step where we see light start being generated out of this darkness, and this is where the egg is actually fertilized and the creation process can actually start. So stanza 3 part 4 says, then the 3 triangle falls into the 4 quaternary. The radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside. The luminous egg, which in itself is 3, the triple hypostates of Brahma or Vishnu, the 3 avasthas, curdles and spreads in milk white curds throughout the depth of mother, the root that grows in the ocean of life. Part A says, the use of geometrical figures and the frequent allusions of figures in all ancient scriptures must be explained. And when they say ancient scriptures, they're talking about the Puranas, the Egyptian papyri, the Book of the Dead, and the Bible. So in the Book of Dizon, as in the Kabbalah, there are 2 kinds of numerals to be studied. The figures, which are often simple blinds, and the sacred numbers, the values of which are all known to the occultist through initiation. The former is but a conventional glyph. The latter is the basic symbol of all. That is to say that one is purely physical and the other is purely metaphysical. So the 2 standing in relation to each other as matter stands to spirit, the extreme poles of one substance. Now, as Blazak, the unconscious occultist of French literature, says, somewhere the number is to the mind the same as it is to matter, an incomprehensible agent, perhaps so profound never to be initiated mind. Number is, as the great writer of thought, an entity and at the same time a breath emanating from what he called God and what we call the all. The breath which alone could organize the physical cosmos were not obtained in its form but through the deity, which is an effect of number. It is instructive to quote Balzac's words upon this subject. The smallest as the most immense creations, are they not to be distinguished from each other by quantity, their qualities, their dimensions, their forces, their attributes, all begotten by the numbers? The infinitude of numbers is a fact proven to our mind, but of which no proof can be physically given. The mathematicians will tell us that the infinitude of the numbers exists, but is not to be demonstrated. As unity, it begins the numbers with which it is nothing in common. The existence of the numbers depends on unity, with a single number begets them all. What? Unable either to measure the first abstraction yielded to you by the deity or to get a hold of it, you still hope to subject your measurements to the mystery of the secret sciences which emanates from the deity. And what would you feel were I to plunge you into the abyss of motion, the force which organizes the numbers? What would you think were I to add that motion and numbers are begotten by the word, the supreme reason of the seers and prophets who in days of old since the mighty breath of God, a witness to which is the apocalypse? So the part where it says then 3 falls into 4 is representative of the masculine principle reaching the feminine principle. Okay, and the 7 inside and outside represents the evolutionary cycle of not only the universe, but the planet, not only the planet, but man. Okay, because all manifested things follow the same evolutionary cycle, which requires them to go through the 7 densities of consciousness. This is the starting point. So 7 inside and outside means the inside is purely spiritual or metaphysical, while the outside is purely physical. As above, so below, as within, so without. You are matter and spirit. Matter is the outside and spirit is the inside, okay? So numbers are entities and their existence depends on unity. What they mean by unity is the absolute, okay? It depends on whether or not God energy is in the period of activity or rest, whether or not we are a part of the whole as one or separate having an individual experience, whether we are in the state of being or non-being, okay? So numbers are used to measure motion, which is apparent in every living thing, every manifestation in this state of being, and also the dimensions, the qualities, and the attributes of manifested being, okay? Part B says the radiant essence curdled and spread throughout the depth of space. From an astronomical point of view, this is easy of explanation. It is the Milky Milky Way, the world stuff, or primordial matter in its first form. It is more difficult, however, to explain it in a few words or even lines from the standpoint of occult science and symbolism, as it is the most complicated of glyphs. Herein are enshrined more than a dozen symbols. To begin with, the whole pantheon of mysterious objects, every one of them having some definite occult meaning, was extracted from the allegorical churning of the ocean by the Hindu gods. Besides Amrita, the water of life or immortality, Sirbhai, the cow of plenty, called the fountain of milk and curds, was extracted from the sea of milk. Hence the universe adoration of cows and bulls, one the productive and the other generative power in nature. Symbols connected with both the solar and cosmic deities. The specific properties for occult purposes of the 14th precious things, being explained only at the fourth initiation, cannot be given here. But the following may be remarked. In the Satapatha Brahmana, it is stated that the churning of the ocean of milk took place in the Satya Yuga, the first age which immediately followed the deluge, as however neither the Rig Veda nor Manu, both preceding Vavesvata deluge, that of the bulk of the fourth race, mentioned this deluge. It is evident that it is not he, great deluge, nor that which carried away Atlantis, nor even the deluge of Noah, which is meant here. This churning relates to a period before the earth's formation and is in direct connection with the other universal legend, the various and contradictory versions of which culminated in the Christian dogma of the wars in heaven and the fall of the angels. The Brahmana, reproached by the Orientalists with their versions on the same subject, often clashing with each other, are preemptively occult works, hence used purposely as blinds. They were allowed to survive for public use and property only because they were and are absolutely unintelligible to the masses. Otherwise, they would have disappeared from circulation as long ago as the day of Akbar. Now, all we really need to understand about this is that it happened before a manifestation in the first age, and the earth or man had not been manifested yet. Why is this important? Well, it's important because of Christian dogma. Christians have mistranslated it and left out context when releasing it to the public because they knew that we would not be able to understand from our level of consciousness. And they use this section to kind of talk about that war in heaven or the fall of the angels. But there is much more that we do not understand here, okay? And then we also need to understand that this is saying that there is a milky substance that is present, and it's the first manifestation of primordial matter. So this has been basically referenced throughout history in conjunction with bulls and cows constantly being referred to as milk, which brought forth the constant use of cows and bulls in our symbolism. Now, the fifth part says the root remains, the light remains, the curds remain, and still AEIOU is one. Now, part A says that AEIOU is rendered Father, Mother of the Gods in the commentaries, or the six in one, or the septenary root from which all proceeds. All depends upon the accent given to these 7 vowels, which may be pronounced as 1, 3, or even 7 syllables by adding an E after the letter O. This mystic name is given out because without a thorough mastery of the triple pronunciation, it remains forever ineffectual. Now, the vowels together are supposed to represent the logos or absolute, the all or the one life, the living eternal unity. So it is the rootless root of all, one with the pair Brahma. These vowels can be pronounced as 1, 3, or 7 syllables. Knowing the pronunciation of the 3-syllable version is imperative or it will be ineffective. This is called the sound of power. Now, part B says this refers to the non-separateness of all that lives and has its being, whether in active or passive state. In one sense, AEIOU is the rootless root of all, hence one with para Brahma. In another sense, it is the name for the manifested one life, eternal living unity. The root means, as already explained, pure knowledge, eternal unconditioned reality, or Sat, whether we call it para Brahma or Mula Prakriti, for these are the 2 aspects of the one. The light is the same omnipresent spiritual ray which has entered and now fecundated the divine egg and caused cosmic matter to begin its long series of differentiations. The curds are the first differentiation and probably refer also to that cosmic matter, which is supposed to be the origin of the Milky Way, the matter we know. This matter, which according to the revelation received from the primeval Dhyayana Buddhas, is during the periodically sleep of the universe of the ultimate tenuity conceivable to the eye of the perfect Bodhisattva. This matter, radical and cool, becomes at the first reawakening of cosmic motion, scattered through space, appearing when seen from the earth in clusters and lumps like curds in thin milk. These are the seeds of the future worlds, the star stuff. Now this part is kind of self-explanatory, but I'll just kind of get into it. So the 7 vowels altogether represent the manifested all or God energy. The root is pure knowledge, eternal unconditioned reality. Whether we're referring to the Parabrahma, which is universal spirit or absolute reality, or the Mula Prakriti, which is the root substance or ultimate matter, since these are the two aspects of the all, which is spirit matter. The light is the omnipresent spiritual ray, which has fertilized the divine egg and wheels cosmic matter into being. The curds are the first differentiation of this cosmic matter. If you need a reference point for this, again, look at the Milky Way, because it's supposed to have its origins in this. So apparently this forms during the rest cycle of the universe and becomes scattered through the universe upon reawakening of cosmic motion. They appear in clusters and lumps. That is why they refer to them as being like curds of milk. These are seeds of the future worlds. Now part 6 says the root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, Amrita, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water of Father Mother. So the secret doctrine says the essence of darkness being absolute light. Darkness is taken as the appropriate allegorical representation of the condition of the universe during praelaya, or the term of absolute rest of non-being as it appears to our finite minds. The fire, heat, and motion here spoken of are of course not the fire, heat, and motion of the physical science, but the underlying abstractions, the noumenon or the soul of the essence of these material manifestations. The things in themselves, which as modern science confesses, entirely eludes the instruments of the laboratory, and which even the mind cannot grasp, although it can equally little avoid the conclusion that these underlying essences of things must exist. Fire and water, or father and mother, may be taken here to mean the divine ray and chaos. Chaos from this union with spirit obtaining sense, shown with pleasures, and thus was produced the protagonos, the firstborn light, says a fragment of Hermes. Damascius calls it dis in theogony, the disposer of all things. According to the Rosicrucian tenets, as handled and explained by the profane, for once correctly, if only partially, so light and darkness are identical in themselves, being only divisible in the human mind. And according to Robert Flood, darkness adopted illumination in order to make itself visible. According to the tenets of Eastern occultism, darkness is the one true actuality, the basis and the root of light, without which the latter could never manifest itself nor ever exist. Light is matter and darkness is pure spirit. Darkness in its radical metaphysical basis is subjective and absolute light, while the latter, light, in all it seems effulgence and glory, is merely a mass of shadows, as it can never be eternal and is simply an illusion of Maya. Even in the mind-baffling and science-harassing Genesis, light is created out of darkness, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and not vice versa. It says, in him, in darkness, was life, and the life was the light of man. That's John 1:4. A day may come when the eyes of men will be opened, and then they may comprehend better than they do now that verse in the Gospel of John that says, the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. They will see that the word darkness does not apply to man's spiritual eyesight, but indeed to darkness, the absolute, that comprehendeth not, meaning it cannot cognize transient light, however transcends to human eyes. So the devil is now called darkness by the church, whereas in the Bible, he is called the Son of God, the bright star of the early morning, Lucifer. There is a whole philosophy of dogmatic craft, and the reason why the first archangel who sprung from the depths of chaos was called Lux or Lucifer, the luminous son of the morning, or manaventeric dawn. He was transformed by the church, though, into Lucifer or Satan because he is higher and older than Jehovah and had to be sacrificed for this new dogma to stick. So basically, this is saying that darkness is the best point of reference we have to what it's like when the universe is in this state of non-being or pralaya. The fire, heat, and motion are not what we would consider it to be based off of our physical senses, but the cause of what we see physically manifest. So fire, the father, and water, the mother, refer to the divine ray and chaos, okay? Heat and water. Chaos is the product of the union with spirit obtaining sense, shown with pleasure, and produces the firstborn light, which is the deposer of all things. Now, the Rashakurian tenets explained perfectly that light and darkness are the same thing, and they can only be separated in the human mind. However, most occultists believe that darkness is the one true reality because light is manifested from the darkness. Light is matter and darkness is pure spirit. They believe that darkness is subjective and absolute light, and light is merely a mass of shadows because it can never be eternal and is simply an illusion. Now, this idea of darkness being the actual reality is referenced multiple times in the Bible. However, because we cannot perceive what we have not experienced, it has been inverted and it has been mistranslated in so many different ways. So one thing that I thought was interesting that we need to investigate just for our own due diligence is this idea of Lux or Lucifer, who is apparently demonized by the church because he did not fit into Christian dogma, being that he was older and higher in rank than Jehovah, okay? So apparently when they were talking about Lucifer, they were talking about the first archangel that manifested from darkness. He was called the morning star. And he was called that because he was coming out of the manaventeric dawn, okay? Now, you don't have to believe anything that I'm telling you. I'm just giving you the information, but use your own discernment and do your research. But also, remember, I said that we create artificial entities based off of what we believe. So the more you give attention to certain energies or ideas associated with those belief systems, the longer these artificial entities exist. So if this is true, we have to do something differently now that we know differently. And that's all I'm really going to say about that. Okay, so in conclusion, let's just do a quick summary. So what is this first part of stanza 3 telling us, okay? So stanza 3 is when light, the male principle or heat, is manifested from darkness and radiated towards the feminine principle, which is called chaos or waters of life, okay, to start this creative process, okay? And the ray, again, is sexless until it falls into the lap of Maya, which is just shadows from light, because darkness is the absolute light. Matter is light and darkness is spirit. So matter is measured and organized by numbers, where spirit is purely metaphysical with no limitations or bounds. During the period of rest, there was this milky substance produced in lumps, which are seeds of the new worlds that was spread across the universe once the process of reawakening occurs and cosmic motion commences, okay? So if you need a reference point for this, again, look at our process of fertilization, how we fertilize our eggs, because again, as above, so below. So this first part of stanza 3 was so informative, guys. Again, the resources come from The Secret Doctrine by Helena Blavatsky, Theosophy Wiki, and The Secret Book of Dizon. Next week, we'll continue reviewing stanza 3. Thank y'all always for tapping in with me. Please make sure that y'all subscribe. Follow me on TikTok at Big Taj with 3 J's. I love y'all deep, and I'll see y'all next week.